This is the Pitcher Nail Down. My name is Russell Clay. You can find me on Twitter at Russell J. Clay. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We got a nice little 10-game Monday slate here. We're going to be looking at the main slates for DraftKings and FanDuel. And this is pretty solid. I mean, overall, pretty average straight or slate in general. Some solid pitching, some weak pitching. There's some punt tournament plays I think that are pretty viable, and there's also some guys you just completely avoid on most and pretty much all slates. So let's get into it. First matchup here: Kyle Hendricks versus Max Scherzer. Cubs Nationals. Nationals -127 favorites. Obviously, they're going to be favorites with Max Scherzer on the hill, and obviously Scherzer's the best pitcher on the slate, but the elephant in the room here is that he's facing a Cubs offense who other than the Red Sox, are basically the best offense in the majors, other than the Rockies at Coors. But obviously, you take away Coors, and that kind of neutralizes their advantage. But yeah, that's a tough matchup for him. He's got some lefties in the lineup that are pretty solid, Rizzo and Hayward, and depending on how Fowler hits, and I mean Chris Bryant righty on righty, but that's still not an easy matchup by any means. And then you look at Ben Zobrist there as well. They all come at cheap prices. I'm not totally buying Scherzer as a cash option today. I do think if things go according to plan, he should be able to hold the Cubs to 1 or 2 runs or something like that on a few hits, but I could also see this going downhill as well. It's not like Scherzer is a Clayton Kershaw-esque like power pitcher. So this could get rough, honestly. And he is in a good position to get a win, but Hendricks is no slouch as well. So you're kind of looking at that from the Nationals side. Their offense might not do well either. So not necessarily the cash arm we all want and need, but obviously Scherzer's a tournament play. Hendricks as well. Scherzer a high-end tournament play. SP1 in tournaments. Going to be sneaking into cash maybe, but not the strongest cash option, that's for sure. And with Hendricks, I'm not avoiding this Nationals lineup, but I'm also not targeting in them either. So strong arm, decent tournament play, SP2 range. On FanDuel, sure, tournament punt, but nothing more than that. No cash for him. Next game here, Jared Eichhoff versus R.A. Dickey. I like Dickey as a tournament play. I think he's in a good spot to get a win against a weak Phillies offense. Righty on righty for Michael Franco, Tommy Joseph, and Cameron Rupp. Depending on what Freddie Galvis does, might be there as well. So you got Ryan Howard in there, who's just striking out a ton. Odubel Herrera's pretty solid, but that's really the only guy I'm worried about in that lineup. So I think R.A. Dickey has a really good shot at a solid win here and a quality start. That's what I'm looking at. Cash, maybe as an SP2 on DraftKings, not necessarily looking for that on FanDuel, but if the lineup construction falls out that way and you can only afford Dickey, I'm okay with that. He's only $7K on FanDuel, so that's super cheap. I like this matchup for them. He has a really good shot at 20 plus DK points and honestly 30 plus FanDuel points. So that's what we're looking at there. Not too worried about this Phillies offense, especially on the road. Next up, we got 2 pitchers you're probably avoiding, Daniel Wright and Aaron Blair. Rarely do you see the Braves projected for 4.5 runs, but that is what's going on against Daniel Wright. So I don't think we're targeting Daniel Wright. I don't see the upside there. He's not necessarily a strong arm. The strikeout upside isn't there. So not necessarily touching that one. Aaron Blair, not touching that one either. As we've seen, when the Reds get in good spots with that offense, it's It's confetti. It's bananas. There's balloons. I don't know what type of party would involve those three things, unless it's like a gorilla or a really hairy man or something like that. But um, Aaron Blair, not touching him. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. And then we move on to the Tigers and White Sox. James Shields pitching for the White Sox. Hasn't been dominant this year by any means, especially in his last two starts. But those were honestly 531 was two starts ago. That's quite a ways ago. The last one obviously got beat up by the Nationals, but getting beat up by the Nationals and the Mariners is at least conceivable. Before that, he'd been pretty consistent in terms of what you're getting from him. So not a perfect matchup by any means. I think you can definitely stack against him, but for 4,800 on DK, I mean, you can't really beat that price. Our DK Cafe Value loves him, 6,700 on FanDuel. That's not quite as good of a price, but it's still a good price. Shields for 48. I'd be throwing some tournament YOLOs on DraftKings out there for sure. Matt Boyd, lefty on righty there. A lot of opposite hand bats in the lineup against Boyd. He hasn't really shown upside this year. Not someone I'm looking at, and someone I'm probably looking to stack 2 through 5 against tonight. It just doesn't seem like that's a viable option to me. And it is slightly different than Shields. So it's not a full punt. It's 1,400 more on DK. So that's kind of what you're looking at there. I don't think you're looking at either on FanDuel. Next up, Indians versus Royals. Carlos Carrasco versus Edinson Volquez. You like Carrasco here, but the Royals don't strike out, especially against righties. I mean, their strikeout rate against righties is just brutal. So Hosmer's been crushing it. Lorenzo Cain, always solid. Salvador Perez, solid. Whit Merrifield actually coming together pretty strong for them at the start of the lineup. So Carlos Carrasco, solid arm. I'm okay with him. I think you could use him in cash. I don't worry about the Royals going off on him. I think they cap his upside, especially in terms of strikeouts. So keep that in mind. But again, in terms of this slate, I think you can throw him in tournaments and be comfortable. But other than that, not really looking too hard at him. And Volquez, I'm not looking at. I think this Indians offense is pretty reasonable. Volquez has allowed 3 or more earned runs in 4 of his last 5 starts. So that's definitely not what you want to see out of a pitcher you're looking to roster. So even at a reduced price, I'm not really looking at him either. Dodgers Diamondbacks. Zach Greinke versus Mike Bolsinger. I can tell you the first moment I looked at this slate, I went directly to Gene Segura. I went directly to Wellington Castillo. And I was just naturally attracted there like a mosquito. And I didn't get swatted down. I didn't get bug zapped yet. So I like that. The more research I do, I like this matchup against Bolsinger. Diamondbacks projected for 5 runs, and even more of a reason to like Greinke. I know he struggled at home early in the year, but when you look at his last 2 starts, he has been dominant. Obviously, he didn't get the strikeouts last game, but 0 earned runs and 7 hits in the last 2 outings together. So I think you definitely ride him in cash. He is my number 1 arm tonight. It's not even particularly close. Again, Scherzer has a really tough matchup, so that's not someone I'm looking at compared to Greinke. I think that the price reduction plus the matchup for him, it just makes it easy to go Greinke here. I expect him to continue. He's a strong arm, and I don't know what happened early in the year, but it seems he's finally sort of caught a positive trend here. 11-2, so it's not killing you either. It's not like it's 14K or anything like that. So, and again, I'm stacking Diamondbacks tonight, so I'm not really looking at Mike Bolsinger. Next up, Twins Angels, Nolasco versus Weaver, Ricky versus Jared, Twins versus Angels. Angels projected for 5 runs, Twins projected for 4, Angels minus 129 favorites. Mike Trout got hurt his thumb yesterday. We'll see if he's in the lineup. If he's not, Nolasco becomes semi-intriguing. He's put together some high upside performances this year, which is pretty shocking, but he has. I mean, not crazy high upside, but enough to certainly get you in contention in a tournament. So that's kind of what you're looking at there, especially against Jared Weaver. I think there's blow-up potential. Even though this Twins offense isn't necessarily a powerhouse, they do chip away at you. They do have some solid pieces throughout the lineup. So Weaver could eventually get chipped away at here and sort of beaten down. I actually, if Trout doesn't play, I kind of like Nolasco quite a bit as an SP2 and even as a punt on FanDuel. So that's what you're looking at there. I think he's a viable option. Weaver, not touching him. I just don't. I don't see the upside there. So I think we're going to avoid him for now. Next up, Cesar Ramos, the lefty, versus the Sean Manaea and the Athletics. When you look at Ramos, I mean, kind of like Gant yesterday against Subs. Lefty, decent arm. It's sort of inconsistent. You don't really know what you're going to get. But 4K, what does he really need to sort of hit value for you on DK? And that's the question you have to pose for yourself. 5.8 on FanDuel. So what does he have to get to hit value? And it's really just like a 4K hitter. If you can get 10 points, that's huge. If you can get 15, that's enormous. And if he can somehow get 20, that's a potential tournament winner. So I don't expect him to. I think this is a pretty tough Athletics lineup in less than elite matchups. So I'm probably fading him for the most part, but I can't help but be intrigued by that price. And if it fits for me, I might throw in a tournament lineup with him. Maybe not quite as much exposure as I had to Gant yesterday, which didn't quite work out. But again, Ramos isn't facing the Cubs. He's facing an A's team that's pretty average. So you got to watch out for Danny Valencia, obviously, and Jed Lowry and Chris Butler and all the randomness that comes with that Athletics small ball lineup. On the other side, not touching Sean Manaea. I don't target this Rangers offense. They're strong, especially since the emergence of Profar. You don't want to mess with them. And with Prince Fielder down at the bottom of the lineup, right where he needs to be right now. Beyond that, not really too worried about Manaea in that game, other than punts for Ramos. This next one, Wei-Yin Chen versus Colin Ray, Marlins versus Padres. Chen is very intriguing to me at his price. If he was 1,000 more, he wouldn't really be in play for me, but lefty versus the Padres at the Padres spot. So I think you're looking at Chen here as a decent tournament option. He hasn't shown a ton of upside, but he's shown the ability to sort of get through starts and not kill you in tournaments, get 15 to 20 points. And I think if you can get that from him, you're happy. In terms of Colin Ray, not really looking at that. I like this Marlins lineup, again, even with Stanton sort of battling himself at the plate. But yeah, back to Chen. I don't know what's going on with this Padres offense, but it seems like ever since they played the Reds, it was like an anti-voodoo doll or something. They just got snapped out of whatever funk they were in, and they've been hitting very, very well, especially Will Myers. So I think when you look at Chen, you are a little worried about that, but obviously has big strikeout upside at some stages. Obviously had that 12 strikeout game against the Brewers. Most likely you're looking at 4 to 5 strikeouts tonight, maybe an earned run or two, which is fine. I think you'll take that. And if he can do that, get you 15 to 20 points. You're not loving it, but again, I think I think in terms of this slate, it's not going to kill you either. So that's what you're looking at there. Maybe an SP2 on DraftKings, not really in play on FanDuel. Last one of the night, Matt Cain versus Chase Anderson. Chase Anderson, baby, he's been really pulling it together. I don't know how, but I mean, 3 of the last 5 starts over 24 DK points, striking batters out, six or more in 3 of the last 5. Isn't allowing a lot of hits, and that's the key here. He hasn't allowed over 5 hits in his last 6 starts. It's just he's been awesome. So you can't really knock it. Tough matchup tonight. Obviously, the Giants have gotten shut down against some strong pitchers of late, but I don't really think that's a viable option. Maybe a deep tournament play. I do like Chen over him, but it's by the slimmest of margins. So I think we go Matt Cain here. Not touching him. I like this Brewers offense, even though they're only projected for 3.4. I'm not afraid of Matt Cain. He has turned it around slightly, but he also had that really rough start to his season. So I'm not totally in favor of going with him tonight. So 6.5 solid price, especially with Vegas on your side, but I'm not going at him tonight. So, and that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, pretty straightforward. We got about 4 or 5 names here that really fit, and then some punts in terms of Cesar Ramos and Kane and Chen, Chase Anderson, guys like that. But Ricky Nolasco, if Trout doesn't play, Carrasco, Scherzer, James Shields in his first start at 4,800. Those are the kind of the guys we're looking at here. So yeah, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. And as always mentioned, tune in, and thanks for checking out Daily Fantasy Cafe. Make sure to check out all our awesome tools and content.